Hey everyone, welcome to episode 137 of the Stelios podcast. In this episode, I literally talk to Tom Doran. So why do I say that like this? Because it's slightly different. A few months ago, Tom got in touch and asked me, when we started recording again, if he could interview me. After the shock subsided, I said yes. Since meeting Tom, I've been impressed with how thoughtful and intelligent he is, so I thought he must be barking up the wrong tree, or clever, or the right tree, or absolutely crazy. But I thought, you know what, let's have a little fun. This episode did run a little long, but I thought each question deserved a proper answer. It is interesting being interviewed because I like interviewing people, and I never really thought many people would want to hear what I have to say. I thought, let's give this a little run, and if it was no good, we thought we'd bin it off, but we actually thought it was quite fun. So, for those of you that don't know Tom and his wife own fish and chip shops in Cornwall, notably Fisherman's Chippy in Mevagissey and Archie's Fish and Chips in St. Stephen in Cornwall, and a couple of other sites, which I probably should have checked before I started this. Tom, has been on the podcast before with another good friend and customer, Martin Robinson. But if you want to hear that episode, go back and listen to it. It's on episode 92. From a content point of view, we've had a really busy year. We've published over 200 articles, and I think that's in the last 6 months alone, to be honest. We get so excited sort of putting the news out there that we sort of neglected the podcast a little bit. Now we've got these up and running as well. Remember, the media stuff, it's our side gig. It's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is keeping you guys stocked with products. Products like batter mixes, super absorbent cloths, microfiber cloths, anything that you need for frying, curry sauces, gravies, fish cake mix, Louisiana seasoning. If you need to clean your fryers, deep fryer cleaner. If you've had a spill and you've got a dirty greasy floor, natural degreaser, dirty cloths, the degreaser is fantastic for that. We send out thousands of parcels a month with DPD. Nearly all of them are delivered next day, especially if you order before 2:00. So if you're here listening to me, slightly curious about what we do, if you don't know, jump over to serres.shop. Have a look how we can support your business. Whilst you're there, you can also read the news and look at recipes too. Is there someone you think we should be talking to on this podcast? Anyone doing something really interesting? If that's a big yes, let me know at stelios@worldofserres.com. If you want to keep in the loop with what we're doing at Serres, you should be following us on social media. But to get information and offers delivered directly to your inbox, join our mailing list, and the link will be in the show notes. Tom, welcome to the Serres podcast. You pitched this idea to me probably in the summer, and the idea was that you wanted to interview me. You thought that people just didn't know enough about what I do, and I'm too busy interviewing everybody else, and you thought, well, let's turn this around. So was that a fair assessment of your pitch?
Yeah, I think so. I think all of us in the industry know a little bit about, obviously, what Serres do. We all buy your products. I thought it would be good to have an opportunity to try and find out a little bit more about Stelios and your journey to through the industry and to how you've reached the point you're at now, really. It's, as we record this, it's the 12th of December. So I think it's a good place to start. It's probably talking about Christmas. I often come under a bit of criticism from my wife. I don't know about you, as being a bit of a Christmas Grinch. Christmas historically has been quite a stressful time for me, because up until 10 years ago I was in the restaurant industry, where Christmas is really quite punishing. Yeah, so I get called a Grinch sometimes by my wife. Just wondering what your view is on Christmas, if it's a time of year that you look forward to, or...
I think I'm both, because anyone that knows me really well will know that I tend to get really stressed at Christmas because I have this perpetual fear that my kids are spoiled little brats. I don't know why. I have this need to sort of try and tone that down a bit. But then my wife reminds me, and my friends remind me, chill your beans. They're just kids and they want to enjoy Christmas. Yeah. And then as I start to calm down, I then start to look forward to what is going to come. I start to look forward to Christmas, the food at Christmas, the family time at Christmas. We close for about 2 weeks, which is, again, something we never used to do when I worked in the fish and chip business. Like, never, like 2 weeks. So it's, for me, personally, it's about finding that balance. So the wife will always call me a Grinch. The kids call me a Grinch. They know they've got it better than they make out, but Alex, who's 9, he'll call me that because he's thinking if I call him that, he'll feel guilty and I get extra presents. And that probably feeds back into my whole guilt cycles. But he knows exactly how to play the system.
It's interesting when you do have kids, isn't it? How your perspective of Christmas changes because my oldest is 11 now, and I think really before my kids came along, so I've got 2 boys now. Christmas really, like the point you made, besides seeing family and the food and stuff, which is always good. Christmas kind of lost its magic as I became older, but you do get some of that back when you have kids, don't you? There's
I'd imagine it from older people's point of view that have grandkids. I'd imagine that also re-enlivens again. So I would imagine Christmas comes through phases for people. So when you are a kid, when you then have kids, and then it probably has a lull again, and then it's probably when you have grandkids. But I don't know. I do really look forward to having Christmas with my kids when they're older as well. I really do. But yeah, I think I'm both. I'm. You'll see as we go along. I'm a bit of a Grinch for everything, to be honest.
I think I spoke to you about this the other day, just in general chat, to try and take some of the pressure away on the build up to Christmas this year. We've actually decided to venture off to Centre Parks at Longleat. We're not there for Christmas Day because I think it's important we go up and see family on Christmas Day. So we're heading up not too far away from you, actually. We're going up to Rutland. And what's that, about 45 minutes from you?
Yeah, 40 minutes or so.
So, but yeah, up into the build up to Christmas, we're meeting some friends at Centre Parks at Longleat. I was reflecting to my wife, Jenny, that when you spend a life in hospitality and catering, it's kind of harder to enjoy places like that because you're kind of analysing them from a different perspective. You kind of from the staff's perspective and how things run and I wouldn't quite do it like that, or sometimes you just have to admire the way these places operate. But one criticism which you often hear sort of aimed at Centre Parks, one that always makes my eyes water when we book it, is the price. There's that joke about what would you do if you won the national lottery jackpot. I'd blow it on a week at Centre Parks. There's always that kind of that joke. What do you? I know that you told me that you've spent a bit of time at.
We've done 2 different ones, and we'll do another one. Yeah. We've also done nice glamping. It wasn't actually that bad. I was surprised, and that wasn't at Centre Parks. I like Centre Parks actually. It's a quality destination, and when I say this, I don't mean it to be classist, but there's no riffraff really. And I don't mean class levels. I just mean arseholes tend to just stay away of any class really. That I've noticed. I might be wrong.
Do they go to Butlin?
I actually don't know where they go, but they're not there. Like the twice I've been, they're not there, which is cool by me. You don't really hear people like. I know it's family orientated. I quite like that. It's quiet. The signal is pretty bad for phones, so it means I can actually just switch off a bit. The first 2 days, my brain is like, why isn't my phone working? And then after that, I'm like, I'm chilled. Yeah, it's expensive, but I guess, you know what? It works. The fact is, when we got there the last time and it was Woburn, it was rammed, and I know it's not the biggest one. Couldn't find a parking space. Well, we could have going around for a while. And you think, well, yeah, there's lots of people. From what I gather, all the rooms were full. Makes you think, well, is it expensive? Yes, but does that mean it's expensive? And I always say to people, and I know that sounds silly, my business, I say to people that there's the cost of something or the price, and then there's the cost of use. And I think that if you're going to a quality destination and you manage to let your hair down and the kids have a great time, then actually, is it that crazy?
It depends also how, you can get away with not spending, you have options.
Take your own food and you can go swimming.
And you can yeah, that's right. My kids, all they want to do is be in the pool, really. So, I mean, you can spend £1,000 going off and doing archery for 5 minutes if you want to, but it is optional. You don't have to do that.
You're right. You can spend a wad, or you can be frugal, or just be sensible. So we had a mix of things. We took food and we ate there, and we ate in the kitchen, and then we also go to the restaurant a couple of times because Alex wanted to watch Man United play, so we went to the sports bar. Actually, I didn't think it was mega expensive considering you're in let's say they've got you're a captive audience. It could have been a lot worse. And I think the food offering was better this time. We went about when Alex was 3, I think, and I didn't really enjoy the food then at all. But I think this time round it was better. So some effort's gone into it.
I think they had to improve. They were coming under some criticism, I think, and people were saying really if you're spending that kind of money on a destination and you kind of forced, unless you say you take your own food, you're kind of forced to use their restaurants. And I think they were kind of pressured by the customers to pay more attention to the quality of the food offer, and I think they have.
I'd love to get them on the podcast because I do think it's a very interesting business. I think that the fact that they're always busy for the most part, the fact that they are more expensive than their competition, or at least what we know of their competition. I'd love to get them on the podcast. I haven't tried yet, but I will in the new year try. It doesn't mean they'll come on, obviously, but I just find it a fascinating business because it's very top heavy. You've got all of that investment, you're cutting out forests, you're then replanting forests elsewhere, you're then building properties, you're building housing estates, all intents and purposes, they're building property that they could easily sell and they don't. The one we went to in Woburn, it was fantastic. Like, I don't know why they bother having the fires in there because it was so warm. The triple glazed windows, it was so warm. It was just, I think it is a very interesting business. I really do think so.
I know it's not the Centre Parks isn't the only business that you find interesting.
I'm laughing because we do this on the phone a lot as well. So go on.
Yeah, I do tease you.
This is on the opposite end of the spectrum, I gather. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
in terms of price,
it kind of is. Yes, it is. Yeah, so they're still a behemoth of the catering world, much like Centre Parks. But of course, as you know, we're going to talk about McDonald's. I think you probably don't post as much about McDonald's as I make out. I think they seem to come. Your McDonald's posts seem to come in waves. It's obviously a business that very much interests you. I know I've heard on one of your other podcasts that you have a friend who has a McDonald's franchise. I believe
I'm friendly with. Yeah.
What is it that about McDonald's?
So from the news aspect is the fact that there is always news about McDonald's, that everyone wants to know about them from outside our industry. So there is a lot of news that goes on about McDonald's. I think they're a bellwether for like business and how it's doing. So there is always a lot of stories about McDonald's, which are interesting. I think when recessions come, especially, a lot of markets look to McDonald's to see how it's working and how are they changing or how are they doing. So as a business, they massively fascinate me. I think they should fascinate everybody in the food business. I really do, because their ability to learn, their ability to change without looking like they've changed. They listen to their customers more than we know. I think one of the criticisms I see from our industry all the time is no one ever complains about McDonald's. If you just click on one of their posts, all you've got is complaint. It's like no one's saying, oh, I had that Big Mac the other day and it was legendary. Yeah, and that's the funny thing. No one goes to McDonald's and never walks out of there saying, mate, that was amazing. No one does that. They generally just eat it and carry on with their day. So when I was chatting to the lady that I'm friendly with, who owns 22, 23 franchises, I explained this to her, how our industry believes that they've got it easy, that no one really holds them to a high standard. And she goes, it's a fallacy that McDonald's aren't held to a high standard. They're actually held to a higher standard. And I think we like to, as a nation, we like to look the other way and say, no, they're not. But I'm quite impressed at how resilient they are as a business, how well they manage to look at themselves and weather the storms that come at them, because they're not the same McDonald's they were in 1986. They're not the same. They're not the same as they were in 2006. They've constantly evolved and changed, and yet stayed familiar to every generation of person that visits it. So I think that's why I like McDonald's. I think I don't eat there that often. I drink a lot of coffee there because I go use the Wi-Fi. I'm always fascinated at how they navigate all these different markets.
I thought one of the things that you were going to say, and last time I was on a podcast with you when we were Martin Robinson, we spoke I mean, there's no way you were going to get through a podcast without mentioning McDonald's. And they did come up. And one of the things that you and Martin kind of said at the time was that you respect about them is their consistency. I actually reflected on that a little bit, because it's something, when you hear people talk about McDonald's, you hear them say, well, it's the same every time. What I admire is, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's always the same. And it's one thing that got said on our podcast. But when I reflected on that, I actually don't really agree with that. I think you can have quite differing experiences on different visits to McDonald's. And, sometimes your burger can look like it's been made in a tumble dryer. And, sometimes your fries are salty. Sometimes there's no discernible salt on them at all. Sometimes they're hot. Sometimes they're not so hot. So I can see why they do get complaints, because I thought it just vaguely annoys me how everyone goes on about the consistency of it. And
their aim is consistency. I think that is true. I think, and are they more consistent than other groups or chains? I think they are. Are they 100% consistent? Probably not. And I think, like everything, or like every business, they're not as bad as they think, and they're not as good as we think. And I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think that when you're serving, I remember someone saying, I remember reading an article, and it was a McDonald's in a rural area, and it was taking on average £4,000 an hour. And you think, when you're doing that sort of turnover in a rural area, like, imagine what the busier ones are doing. I think that's quite impressive that you can knock out what you can. But yeah, do you go sometimes and the fries are undersalted, which is my pet peeve. Like, if I'm having fries, because I want them to be salty. If I'm eating in a McDonald's, I want that. I don't really appreciate any food out that I'm eating out that is solely focused on health. I think that don't get me wrong, I don't want them to use, motor oil, or I don't want them to use overtly bad ingredients, but at the same time, I'm not going there because my priority is to be healthy. If I want to do that, I'd stay home. But yeah, from your consistency point of view, I think they do strive for consistency. And I think it may not always be the same, but the experience is probably always the same.
And it's kind of sufficiently the same. It works within the parameters.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think they would tell you, they'd be the first to say that, they're never going to get it, the 100% McDonald's experience 100% of the time. But I've never really thought of it like that. But I do sort of see it as there's no one else on that scale. I think, what is it in the UK? 1,400 sites in the UK. There's no one else on that scale that can get close to that sort of level of consistency. But then, we see bad days in our industry too. Like, I
mean, morally, McDonald's in the past have come under a lot of criticism from the general public, as well as the government, or various governments around the world, really, for intentionally targeting children with their marketing. And I think they obviously realized very early on that by weaponizing children as a marketing tool, because you know what it's like when you're in the car and you've got your kids in the back, and they see the end, don't they? And all of a sudden they become this really powerful marketing tool, because they're putting the parents under pressure to go in, and then the parents, they can't really be asked to cook, so it's convenient. And often, not always, but often, as parents, we might succumb to that because it's kind of programmed into the mind of children, very deliberately, I think, by McDonald's, that this kind of brand loyalty and brand recognition is. And it's funny, because I was reflecting on it with Jenny. My kids are very much involved in grassroots football. I think that over recent years, McDonald's have come under increasing pressure and criticism to reduce their level of advertising aimed at children. And it's almost as a workaround, they now get involved in these kind of community sponsorship deals. So, I look at, not my son's football team, but there's another football team that are the same age over at Charlestown in St Austell, who have got McDonald's on their shirt, because McDonald's have very kindly offered to fund the purchase of the kits in exchange for them being able to put the McDonald's logo on the front of their kits. McDonald's buy footballs, but the McDonald's logo is on the footballs that they buy. And really this to me, although the football clubs obviously appreciate it, because they're all strapped for cash, but for me this is a workaround, isn't it? It's a cynical workaround.
I wouldn't deny that, But that's nothing that the local fish and chip shop or local taxi firm couldn't do. But we used to supply football clubs when I worked for my dad, and that was, we had peach chippery on their tops. And I'm sure people probably thought that was, cynical, or at least, a bit of a laugh because you're eating fish and chips and, you've got it on their tops. So, but is pester power really, really important? Probably is to them. Not just them, Toys R Us, all of these things. Like, if you can get to the kids, you get to the parents, because usually the mother would say, I don't want the headache. Let's just go McDonald's. And everyone goes McDonald's for argument's sake, or whatever it is where you can get that kid on board. So pester power is really important. And I'm sure that all marketing companies would do that. One thing I do appreciate about them is that they have reformulated their recipes. They have, the reason why there is less salt on their fries is because there is actually less salt on their fries today. And I think they've got it down to the point now where if you don't press it properly, it doesn't taste like there's any on there. Whereas I remember when I used to go to McDonald's, when I was, let's say 13 or whatever, you had fries. You knew you had fries because you needed that drink to wash down the salt. Whereas now I'm going up to the little table and I'm getting salt to add to my fries. And that is probably also a sign of my age. McDonald's don't do, I think their kids' meals or Happy Meals are under 500 calories. You get fruit instead of fries if the parent wants them. And I'd imagine that all of these things are pretty fruitless because parents just order fries and a burger. I think that, are they actively targeting children? Yeah. But then they also actively target business people and people on dates and people that are families and older people at lunchtime.
Well, they do. That's intentional, but that's what they call the cradle to grave marketing, isn't it?
Exactly. But you do see how McDonald's, and we've wrote about this recently, they've had a bit of a problem with kids in the stores, outlets, whatever, and they have been banning them from going in on their own. And I'm sure they hate to do that because no one wants to give up any revenue. I think it is changing. Like if I said to my son, where do you want to go eat? He'll give me 5 or 6 different suggestions. McDonald's will be on there, but he will give me 5 or 6 different suggestions. Whereas I think when I was younger, it was pretty much only McDonald's that I wanted to go to. And we lived in a fish and chip shop. So if my dad said to me, where do you want to go? It would have been McDonald's every time. Because he much preferred KFC. And did he like the fact that they probably targeted us as kids? Probably not. But did he want an easy life? Yeah.
Well, we spoke about Five Guys, didn't we, the other day? I told you that I'd been off to Cardiff and I'd had my first ever Five Guys experience. And I have to say, my wallet was considerably lighter, but very, very nice burger, and very nice chips.
And I think what I like about McDonald's is that they look at that. I've written an article about it recently where they are stripping back their burgers. One article was about how in Australia they stripped back the Big Mac to 50 different components, which is probably what it is operationally, although we receive one. I don't eat Big Macs, I don't like them at all. They're making it better on every point. So where there's half an ounce of sauce, they're adding 3/4 of an ounce of sauce. Where they now cook 8 patties at a time, they're cooking 6 to make them fresher. And they're aiming at companies like Five Guys. They're basically saying, we're coming after that share of the market. Fresher quality, better product in their eyes. Obviously, I'm not saying that. I'm using their words. Yeah. We're coming after that slice of the market. And I think people like Five Guys, Honest Burgers, they're all in this market. And I think if McDonald's gear it, their consistency levels with that level of execution, I think they've got a place to worry. I think, especially if they don't put the price up anymore, if they're making a better burger for the same price, then those guys have got something to worry about. And I don't just mean Five Guys, I mean anybody making a premium burger. Because I think premium burgers are hit and miss. I think I told you I liked, for a while, I did like Shake Shack, and they're in London. And there's a few others, there's one in Cardiff as well. And I just felt like they were really good when they first came, and now they're a bit lackluster. They cook too many burgers at once. Five Guys, what I like about Five Guys is that they cook it immediately in front of you. You have to wait 10 minutes. Big hoo-ha. It's not the end of the world. But I genuinely think it's worth the wait. And those peanuts at Five Guys, I'm obsessed with them because they're so salty. I love them. You probably see that I'm probably going to die by high blood pressure. And I think that there's a really good burger place in London, if you're ever in London, called Bleecker Burger. And they're a London group, basically. But if McDonald's are aiming at sort of the higher end burgers, and if they can execute it at their level, I think people have a place to worry. I really do. I never write off McDonald's. Since I've been a kid, and you see them, and every 10 years or so, you see an article saying, "Oh, they're done for," and yet Their share price goes higher. They keep opening more stores. Their closure rates are really low. They do have closure rates, and yet they just carry on plowing through. And I think you can't beat that. And that's why we should respect that, because I think it's a lazy argument to say, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but I think a lot of people say this, especially from our industry, that because they're so strong at marketing, they can sell shit. I think if that was the case, you'd never see them change anything. They'd still be doing polystyrene. They'd still be doing all the things that were bad in the 80s.
Interesting talking about food that is and standards of food in the UK. One thing that I think I've spoken to you about before is your love for MSG, and I'm not surprised you love it because you've just told me how much you love salt. And obviously, MSG is a similarly sort of satisfying flavour. Certainly, in the kind of around the 2010 kind of time, it seemed like a lot of the big players in the food industry were trying to distance themselves from monosodium glutamate. I know that Knorr reduced it from a lot of their catering and domestically available stocks and bouillon powders and pastes and things because of the bad press that MSG was receiving. I know that Co-op back in 2005 banned MSG from all of their kind of own brand products, and certainly Tesco reduced the number of products that contained MSG. And then while all this was going on, you seem to just be adding it to a wider range of your products. Why?
I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with MSG. I think I'm obsessed with umami. Umami is, I think, it's the sixth taste that we've got. And we wouldn't probably been aware of it in England, until probably about 10, 15 years ago in the UK. Whereas the Asians have been obsessed with it for centuries. And I think I'm obsessed with constantly building flavour. So even at home, if I'm making a chili, the wife won't let me make chili no more because it's a day's process. I'm using 3 different cuts of beef. I'm bringing in flavors from so many different angles. And she's just like, look, I'm just going to knock out a chili for the kids. And, you carry on doing what you're doing. I'm using 4 different types of chilies, one of them smoked, because I love depth of flavor. And this is what I do when I create products for Ceres. I'm constantly thinking about how are all these flavors bouncing off each other? Because why do people choose to eat out? It's because they want flavor. Why are people obsessed with Doritos? They're not the tastiest product in the world. It's probably MSG, yeah? But it's the fact that there's enough MSG on that Dorito to improve the flavor that is there. And it's not a hack just to say, oh, we're using a cheap ingredient. There's cheaper flavor enhancers out there. There is and there's more expensive ones, but none of them, people have tried. Nothing delivers umami quite like MSG. For example, Parmesan. Yeah, but you wouldn't associate that with MSG. It's not monosodium glutamate. What makes Parmesan so addictive is glutamatic acid. Glutamatic acid is just the natural occurring form of monosodium glutamate. So why do we keep going back to that? One of my favorite dressings is probably like the Caesar dressing, because you've got anchovies, Parmesan, those 2 things together for me, and I like mustard as well, so some mustard in there. It sets off a light bulb in my brain. It's like that is what flavor is. Why do I like Wagamama? Because again, it's not the most adventurous Asian food in the world, but their use of, maybe not MSG, but their use of these flavors to create umami, it really makes you bounce a bit. Steak's another one. I will get a nice piece of steak and I will season it with salt, pepper, a little bit of MSG and garlic powder or garlic granules. And then I'll do a reverse sear because, again, I'm pretty obsessed with that. And then I'll finish it off. And the flavor that you get, it's immense. And I do think there has been a witch hunt against MSG. And I've done all the research. We've written 3 to 4, maybe 5 articles on it. We did think about this very quietly and privately first as a company. What is this impact? But then ask yourself, if you're playing the big game of selling crisps, which is a fried product, very thin, very high fat ratio, very high salt ratio. If you've got to drop something to keep selling loads of crisps, what do? You drop MSG. Because now you can say no MSG. But and sell more crisps, because now it's a health statement. Apparently, it's a health statement.
Where did the kind of bad press surrounding MSG come from?
So in 1968, someone wrote into a medical journal. I think it was a medical journal. I guess it was, and they just signed it off with a name, and it basically said, "Why is it I feel crap whenever I go to a Chinese restaurant?" And what was born was the Chinese restaurant syndrome. It wasn't an aversion to MSG. It was basically Chinese restaurant syndrome. And basically what a lot of people said straight away, well, it must be the MSG. It must be the MSG they use. Well, actually, Chinese restaurant syndrome is a really interesting syndrome. So have you ever eaten Chinese food and afterwards felt dehydrated, maybe a bit headachy?
Yes.
And there is a reason for that. And that is the ingredients they use. So you've got salt, sugar, MSG, and Shaoxing wine. Shaoxing wine is basically like sherry. Yep. So if you're using those ingredients in a dish, they're all very, they dehydrate the palate. So when you dehydrate like that, you are going to get a headache. They're diuretics. That's what happens. And at the same time, because of the sugar, it's lifting your blood sugar level. So then you feel crap because you've just gorged on loads of, authentic Chinese food. I did that in quote. I should have used quotes. Yeah. Because it's about as Chinese as I am, let's be honest, so you've got all those ingredients. And then let's say you're out for a meal, you might have a pint with it as well. So that's, again, it's a diuretic. You've dehydrated yourself. So that's why they say if you have a pint of water before you eat Chinese food, you'll feel so much better, because it's counteracting that. So basically they just blamed it on MSG because it was easy, whereas actually Chinese restaurant syndrome is a combination of those four things. And it was a food scientist that I love it. I got his books. Wherever he's on TV, I'll listen to him, or on YouTube, and his name's Harold McGee, and he's a food scientist, and he's basically the guy that Heston Blumenthal really looks up to, and that's how I found out about him. It's interesting because there's a chef that I follow called David Chang, and I think he's Korean American. And he just did a YouTube video, and again, it's linked to it in our articles. And he just says it's racism. Like we didn't understand it, so we said, "Oh, it's Chinese, so it must be bad, and it's racist." And he could say that. I don't know too much about it, but I do think that when there's something that cultures don't understand, we poo-poo it. And I think, of course, we're not going to understand about MSG. Yeah, I love sriracha sauce. I love all hot sauce. One thing that really annoys me about sriracha sauce is because they say no MSG. Now, if I've got sriracha sauce from Thailand, it would have MSG in it, and I'm trying to source some. Like, I genuinely am, because I think it'll be better. Because when you add MSG to products like that, it just pops. I'd say another product where MSG is really good, or at least umami-based ingredients, is lamb. Think of lamb with rosemary and garlic. You're packing it with umami. Anchovies. Why is it we love anchovies? Well, some people love anchovies. I'm obsessed with them because it's that umami, that punch. But the point is, no study at the moment, and there's been lots, has shown any negative effects from using MSG. Yes, some people are allergic, just like you are to soya or gluten. That goes without saying. Is it as prevalent as what people think? Probably not. They found that when they gave humans really high doses of MSG on empty stomachs, some people got sick. Well, you know what, mate? If I eat a whole head of broccoli, I'm going to be sick too. There's going to be a serious problem. I'm going to be on that toilet for hours, because you shouldn't be doing that. That is not the way we test things. And actually, in some of our recipes, let's say our curry sauce, MSG is in there at 1%. And all it's doing, it's not, they call it a flavor enhancer, but that's the legal definition. We call it a clarifier, because what it does, it melds together all of those spices. It makes them taste as one, as opposed to chili, cumin, cardamom separately. It brings them together. Yeah. So you bring, and for me, I want customers to have a rounded experience when they eat a product. So that's why we use it. I don't get into the whole witch hunt. We had a guy that I don't even know, he's not even in the industry from what I gather, and he messaged us on Facebook a few years ago. It might have been over COVID, and he's like, if you use citric acid, you should stop right away. I'm allergic, citric acid's really bad, blah 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 blah. I just didn't respond. These witch hunts on ingredients, it's just silly. I don't know if you ever used citric acid, but it's just basically it's lemon juice concentrate. That's all it is. It's,
Mhm.
and I think you can synthesize it now as well. But it's just an ingredient that tastes tart. That's all it is. Because one person out of a million feels like gives them a dicky stomach. Like, there's witch hunts against ingredients. Just to give an example of how harmless something like MSG is. China is the second biggest consumer per capita of MSG, and they have some of the healthiest lifestyle people. People live till quite a high age. South Korea,
Yeah.
the people live longer in South Korea per capita and are healthier by all accounts, and they have double the amount of MSG than Chinese, and they have it on they have it on their table next to, instead of salt and pepper, they have salt and MSG.
They also eat a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables. They eat less meat.
A lot of greens, yeah. And I think it is all diet related. So does it matter where you probably get your MSG from, as in what part of the diet? Probably if you're having it on steak and greens, it's probably not the end of the world. But if you're having it eating 4 kilos of Doritos a day, you're probably going to have a problem. Like, and again, I'm not knocking Doritos. Actually, I'm just saying, I'm using it as an example.
No, it didn't sound like you were. But also, I think the reason I knew you wouldn't mind me asking you about it is you never. It's not like you snuck it
No.
To your products. You've always been quite open about your use of MSG. It's not ever something I think that there's possibly an element in the wider food industry where people might want to not draw attention to the fact they've got MSG in their products, whereas you've always stood by it, haven't you?
Yeah,
proudly.
I just think whatever we choose, whatever ingredient we choose, we stand by it proudly. I think, whether it's British wheat sourced from, 25-mile radius from the M25 or whatever, like, I think that not everything's going to sound as sexy as that. Like, but everything has a different function. Like, and we are dealing with functional ingredients. Nothing's in the recipe unless it needs to be. Like, genuinely, a lot of people just look at that. Everyone's an expert now, you see, because everyone watches TikTok and YouTube or whatever, or Instagram, and they'll just look at the back. Oh, it's shit. Why is all this shit? Like, there's a guy that I follow, I quite like, actually. I find him really entertaining. He's called Eddie Abu. He makes me laugh because he just pick up a pack of sausages at Aldi or Lidl or Tesco. He's like, it's full of shit. It's full of shit. And he's like, why do you need starch in there? Whoa, Eddie. You need starch in sausage, because if you don't, it's like eating a flip-flop. Yeah. If you've got the fat's going to run off and it's going to be horrible, because that is, and a sausage is that. I think people have this notion that sausages are full of pork loin. What's that old saying? A sausage is everything, including the squeak. It is going to be all the bits that don't make it into pork chops and pork shoulder steak, and it's going to be all of that except offal. Like, so, and I like the guy, I really do, and I understand his point. He's basically saying eat as clean as you can, but the point is, starch would not be in a sausage if it didn't have a function. It's not there to pad it out. Mm-hmm. It's in there at 2-3%. It's there to make the sausage nicer to eat, a nicer mouthfeel. And you could argue that if it wasn't in there, nobody would eat them. Like, if I gave my kid a sausage that didn't have starch in it or no flavour in it, they wouldn't eat it. They'd spit it out because it'd be too hard. Actually, sometimes the use of starches, the functional starches, can allow people to eat something that they wouldn't have usually eaten. So, yeah, I think you've got to understand why you use an ingredient and then stand proudly by it. And it doesn't mean you don't ever stop using it. If something else can take its place that's better, then go ahead. Like, for example, when we launched our gravy, let's say 8 years ago, I can't remember what it was, it had 6 allergens in them. Now, I've got to be honest, my take on allergens is very different to most other people's. Allergens are not bad for you. People need to get it out of their head. The word allergen is not a bad word. It's not E numbers on Skittles. And actually, E numbers aren't bad either. That's my other unpopular opinion that I'll save for later. E numbers mean that they're generally recognised as safe. Some of them are at the high end and some are at the low end. So allergens are not bad for people. They're bad for people that cannot eat allergens. Yeah. So now our gravy is allergen free. That's not because we hate allergens. It's because we see a market that we can serve the same product essentially to a wider audience.
As operators, sorry to interrupt, but we like to have that reassurance with the products we use, don't we? Because there's so often there's that very irritating disclaimer that you
May
get on
contain.
products, whereas it may contain, and we then have to pass that on to the
And they get
consumer
annoyed.
who's asking.
Yeah.
And on our, or they do, and on our allergy matrix, which most food businesses or all food businesses should have now, which is it gives our staff access to the allergen information within all of the products we sell. We have got where we've had to write on various products may contain because of this disclaimer you get, and it must be extremely irritating for people who have genuine allergies.
Because it really cuts down on their enjoyment. And I was in a lot of allergy groups for a while just to understand that thought process, and they hate it. And I think because there's two types of operator. There's that person who just wants to get it right for them, as the other one that just wants to cover his arse or her arse. So if it's a may contain, you've got to pass that along, and this is why our pre-dusts are really popular, because they are allergen free. They're made with allergen free ingredients in an allergen free room. They're sealed hermetically. Let's say you're just using a bog standard rice flour. No one's taking those efforts to make sure that it is free of anything, because the value to them is so low. They just want to knock out millions of tons. All our ingredients, for the most part, I understand every single one that goes into it. I may need to go back to refresh my memory, look at my notes, because I'm not a human knowledge base, but I will have to. I do understand everything we've used and why. But will I be able to tell you off the top of my head right now or tomorrow if I came to your shop? Probably not. So I always say to people, if you've got any questions, ask me beforehand, and then I can at least go back and look at our notes. So all in all, MSG, I feel like people just go after it for no reason.
I said at the beginning, part of the objective of this conversation that we're having is that we all wanted to find out a little bit more about you. So I think I'll start by asking you, just can you tell us a little bit about your journey from let's say from leaving school kind of age to where you are now? How have you got to this point?
But I always wanted to be a chef. My dad wanted me to work in the chip shop, but I wanted to be a chef. I didn't go to chef school because there was some family dramas, and I just thought, I'll just go in the chip shop. But from age 14, 15, Dad was like, I need you to work in the shop. We're family, we work together. I think they probably thought that from the age of 14 to 16, I had severe diarrhea because I was always in the toilet. I didn't want to work, so I'd hide in the toilet. I remember I'd have books in the toilet at the shop, which was next door to the house, and I'd have books on the top shelf behind the toilet roll. So I'd have the Count of Monte Cristo, loads of great books. And the Count of Monte Cristo was a good one because it was really thick. It was 1,200 pages. So you could hide it, it'd stand up. But then one day I got caught because my dad went to get some toilet roll off the top shelf and it fell on him. And I think it nearly wiped him out, to be fair, because it was such a heavy book.
At least it wasn't razzle.
It wasn't what?
At least it wasn't razzle.
No, it wasn't. But I was very efficient on the books that I chose because I just didn't want to really work at that age either. And I was pretty lazy. I think if you ask any of my family, they'd say he was lazy. He did not want to be in the shop. And that probably caused some resentment to everyone else. And then obviously I then chose to come into the business. And then Mum was diagnosed with cancer when I was about 17, 18. And then that was it. You were just full on, in the business. She survived. She's still with us now, which is great. You sort of, before you know it, your life's just sort of gone by. But then we were using a certain batter at the time. I think we were probably about, I don't know. I was probably working for my dad at this point for about 7 years or so, 8 years, full time as an adult, so after school. And I was always interested in food technology, always. I remember when I was just finished school, pre-prep chips were really becoming a thing. And I was obsessed with modified atmosphere packaging and this. And I remember we'd have manufacturers come round for certain things. I'd be like, oh, is it this? Is it that? And they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I was obsessed with it. I don't know why. And then we had a batter problem with the batter that we were using. And for whatever reason, they just didn't know how to fix it. We were going around in circles. So we'd get the manufacturers in, they'd bring you another 4 bags, but they were still knackered. And then I had this idea just to try to do it myself. I built a recipe at the time, tweaked it. And it was just too much doing it on our own. There were busy sites, so there was just too much to keep doing on our own. And I went and found first I did ring up the other batter manufacturer, because there was only 2. Now there's 3. 3 that we know of. There's others, obviously. But we rang up the other one and we said, look, here's our recipe. Would you like to make it? And they basically just said no. They was not interested. We've got 3 shops at the time. There's probably going to be more at some point. And they were just nope, not interested. Okay. So I went and found this really dinky flour mill in Wantage. If you're ever going in Oxfordshire, it's a little village in Oxfordshire called Wantage. And you drive down this little road and you see a flour mill there. I mean, it's just like it's in a building, and like you have to stop in traffic, I think, sometimes when they're using forklifts. I don't know how I found them. I actually don't know how I found them, to be honest. I just did. And I rang them, and the guy there was really nice, a guy called Paul Munsey. I've not kept in touch with him, but I remember him. And I remember going, and he showed me around, and this place was proper ancient. It had some real charm. I don't mean ancient in a derogatory way. I just mean in an old-fashioned way. It was really had a lot of charm. And but he said to me, he goes, look, we can do this for you, this batter that you want, but we will have a problem if you use volume, because if you use volume, like, we just can't keep up with it. So I was like, okay then. So we ordered like one pallet for us, another pallet came, and then a couple of friends said, oh, we'd like to use it. And I was like, okay then. And then we then thought, we're going to have to do something here because we were using a bit more. And then a customer rings and says, customer stroke friend says, oh, there's seeds in the bottom of the bag, seeds, like wheat berries. So I ring up Paul, and I'm like, Paul, there's wheat berries. He goes, yeah, I thought this was going to happen. He goes, we're just that busy. We can't flush the machines out fast enough, hence why you're getting a bit of berry at the bottom of the bags. And I was like, that's not the end of the world. Like, like it's berry. Like, and we always sieve flour. We always sieved it before making batter anyway. So, it didn't bother me that much. I'm a big fan of sieving because they do it in bakeries, and it's because it makes the flour fluffier. I've just been a big fan of that always. And he says, look, he goes, I can help you find another flour mill if you want. And I was like, okay, if you really want to. Like, I don't like the fact that he was moving me, but I also understood it. So we have a meeting with this really big company down in Essex. And they're like, well, yeah, we could do it. It's not a problem. Whatever you need. But it's got to be like Arctic loads to start. And I was like, well, fucking hell. Like, we're just like, because we're buying one at a time. And, and they were like, no, this is what we've got to do. Like, you don't have to take it all at once, but we have to make an Arctic load, And I was like,
yeah. And it
does have a shelf life. And we didn't really think of it as a company, really. It was just us and a few friends using it, So then a friend of mine says to me, just make a company, sell it to others. I pretty much did that. And then that was called the Batter Company. But then things started to grow a little bit differently. And, and then I didn't step out of the fish and chip shop straight away. I was very cautious.
Had you warmed by this point? Had you warmed to the frying at all? Or
I absolutely loved the job I did working for the working in the business. The struggles we had is that my brother would say this now is that the struggles we had is that we were on different wavelengths, and even now we'll disagree on certain things, and that's why we're not in business together no more because. But they had a different opinion for the way the business should have been ran, and I had a different opinion for the way I thought it should have been ran. And actually, that isn't a problem. We found out early before it became a problem. And I think that could have been a bigger issue if we'd fast forwarded 10 years and we started hating each other. But we all love each other, and we dealt with it early on. Like now when I'm in fish and chip shops, I absolutely love it. I love the banter with customers. When I go see shops, I love it. I think it's great. I do miss that. But I've also got another business that takes up a lot of my time. That's why I don't do that. But I stepped out really when Alex was born, completely full time. And then, even then I was doing 2 days a week. I'd sort of gone down to like 2 days a week, and I was just helping them on weekends really. But then when Alex was born, we just thought, no, it's taking up our time. It's a real thing that it needs people to be on top of it. It's not a hobby, it's a real business. And we thought you either use it or lose it. So we just jumped head first really and gave it a good push. Yeah. So that's how that came about really. And the Batter Company was born, and then we changed probably about when Alex was born actually. So 2007, the Batter Company was born. When Alex was born in 2014-ish, we changed over to Ceres and rebranded.
Never looked back.
I look back and forward. I look everywhere. Like, I don't want to be one of those romantics that just say, oh, I've never looked. I look at everything.
I said I was going to ask you about mentors and influences. So
I was thinking about the 3 or 4 most that I utilize daily, essentially. And one is Miriam, my wife. Like, you wouldn't think of her as a mentor, but actually, if you're going to build a business, what are you building it for? My motivation, I guess, was to make a better life for me and my wife and our kids. So I think, it's rounded me off to some degree. Not that I was ever crazy, but it's given me focus. And she's a great sounding board. She probably gets annoyed that I don't tell her enough stuff. When I do, she's a great sounding board. We're very different personalities.
Did you find that she reins you back in?
Yeah, I think so to some degree. Like, with different personalities. So I've always got these great ideas, and she's like, realistically, how are you going to make that work? And I'm like, oh, okay. And now in the business, that's actually her job. Like, her job in the business is that basically come up with a great idea, and I'll say, "Now go do it." Like, you've got to make it happen. Like, whereas before I'd get bored and be like, I'd forget halfway through that I was doing it because it needed dedication, and I'm not that dedicated really in that way. I come up with great ideas, and now I need someone to make it happen. So, like the media training day we did recently, I came up with the outline, and I said to her, "Go for it. You go do it." Like, and I didn't really get involved. And like, even then when she was coming at me and asking me questions, I'd be bored. Like, genuinely, because I'd be like, didn't I tell you just to do what you need to do? Like, why are you coming at me with stuff like this? And she's like, "You're really annoying." And I'm like, "I know, but like, tell me something new." And we've got another project that's ongoing at the moment. And she was like, "Oh, like, this, that." And I was like, "Babe, like, seriously, like, you know what to do. Like, don't need my input on this." But I get her point is, if I don't ask and then I see something that's different later on, she'll moan and say, "Well, you can't moan because I did it," and I will moan because that's me. So yeah, I think that is that. I don't want to do this whole, they're not in any particular order. Although I live with my wife, so it helps that I listen to her and I take her advice on board. And actually, if I don't take her advice on board, it could impact our life as well. Because a friend of mine that I alluded to earlier, James Morley, he had a potato business doing chips. Always been a sounding board. Like, he's now in haulage, but he's a great businessman. If I ever need anything, he's at the other end of the phone. I can just text him about anything. A few years ago we had a problem using Sage software accounting. It was honestly, this was a crisis, to be honest. Like, so it was before I had Ryan, and it basically said that there was a glitch with the software. It was a legit software, which is why we got support from the bank. But basically, it told us that all our bills were paid to us, so all our debtors were paid, but we had no money in the account. So nothing was adding up. I was like, what the hell's going on here? Because if everyone's paid and we've got no money in the account, we're basically bankrupt. Like, Mm-hmm. And we found the problem, got on the phone with Sage. They said, "Yeah, it's a problem. We're trying to fix it." And then I told my mate, James, and he said to me, "So basically you've got a cash flow problem." I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "How much you need?" Just like that. And I was like, "Mate, you can't." He goes, "No, how much you need?" He didn't ask how it was going to get paid. And I was just like, okay. He's not the only one to do that, amazingly. And then I think the other mentor I've got, mentor, advisor, friend, customer, is a guy that hopefully is coming on the podcast again soon. His name's Fred Capel. I met him at a shop once. He was at a shop visiting. I can't remember why exactly. Maybe something to do with the Fish and Chip Awards. I don't know. And I was just dropping off some stock. I think he might have heard of me, but he didn't know me. I definitely heard of him, but I didn't know him. I don't know why. He just sort of said, he spoke about one of our customers. And I was like, "Yeah, I know them because we supply them." And he was like, "Oh, really? You supply them?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it just turned out to be one of his favourite fish and chip shops. And it's the Magpie Cafe. And he was like, "How do you know them then?" I was like, "Well, mate, they're better, etc. etc." And he's like, "Oh," and I think that might have piqued his interest. And then we just became very close friends after that, very close. But he's a good sounding board. And one thing he taught me, and I was really thinking about this when I saw this earlier, one thing he taught me is to overreact when something is business threatening. He always says, he goes, and I think he mentioned this on his podcast, but he is on my back if he perceives something to be business threatening and I'm being too relaxed. And I mean, he'll shout at me, because he's like, "You're not seeing this properly." And I'm like, I sort of, things come at me slow and they build up. Yeah, that's where I am. Whereas he's like, "No, I smell a threat. Deal with it now." And I really take that on board. And, I'm friends with a few people and I'll say to them, "This is business threatening. Deal with it." And Charlie's one of them. He'll be like, "Oh, you sound like Fred now." And I'm like, "Yeah," because it's instilled in my head now. Like, if anything is business threatening, but also he's a good moral soundboard. If I'm working on anything if I throw it over to him first and just say, "What do you think of this?" He doesn't always have to agree. But it's a soundboard. And he's an overall good guy. They're a brilliant family. He runs an amazing fish and chip business, amazing. He's probably one of the only guys I know, one of the few in the industry that actually runs a fish and chip shop that is more akin to a hospitality restaurant. You go to his place and you feel like you're not in a fish and chip shop. Yes, they do great fish and chips. I know they do amazing fish and chips, but they also do great service. And Fred goes above and beyond. His team go above and beyond to make sure they give great service. Anybody listening to this that knows Fred will agree with everything I'm saying. I'm saying nothing new. And in fact, he'll hate the fact that I'm talking about him. Because he doesn't like that. The last person I'd say is Mark Drummond, who I've mentioned before, who won't come on the podcast. He is my grammatical spell check. He tells me 10 times a day that I'm wrong. Again, another moral soundboard. Yes, he uses some of our products, but again, you'll never get Mark to do something that he won't want to do. He is very clear on what he likes. This guy, he's taught me more about politics and laws than I'll ever understand. He understands mostly everything. Most people dislike him because of how right he is.
Right.
He can be frustrating. And that's also why I like him, because he challenges me.
He certainly has a very active presence on the Facebook groups, doesn't he? But more often than not, I mean, it's his comments, and I don't know the guy, but I know him from his presence on there, and it's always very articulate, and he talks facts, and he also seems to be supportive and helpful.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. He's the mildest person I know, and he comes across a bit stiff on Facebook because he's usually talking fact. He's not actually saying that he agrees with something. Sometimes he's just explaining the fact. Like, and people sometimes take issue with that and like, oh, you agree? He's like, no, I'm just telling you that this is the way the law is explained, like, or the legislation is explained, or but. He frustrates me. He knows he does. But that's why I like him, because he's not afraid to tell me if I'm wrong or he perceives that I'm wrong. He'll challenge my ideas, so I then present them better. And we need people like that around us. If we've got yes people around us, we don't grow. And this is why I like my mentors, essentially. And there's others that I'll never get to sort of explaining because I'll be here till tomorrow. You need people to challenge you. And these are all friends. And obviously Mira is my wife. And the last person is really, and this is a cliche, obviously it's my dad, because he taught me to just keep working hard. As much as I hated it, as lazy as I was when I was 14, 15, 16, if you spoke to him today, I think he'd agree that I wasn't lazy after that. And he taught us work hard. Opportunities come when you work hard. He's worked so hard, he's probably killed himself early for it. But I do respect the guy because he did a job that he probably didn't want to do. He did it to bring up 4 kids, and make a better life for them. And I think that's something that I do have a lot of credit for. My dad also, similar to Fred, attacks things very fast if he sees it business threatening. Slightly different to Fred, but I mean, my dad, I've seen him nearly put businesses out of business because he's seen it as business threatening. He would stand his corner. I remember years ago, a company, I was a bit young, and a company went bankrupt on us. We didn't use a lot of money. They didn't owe us a lot of money. We were only a small company anyway. And he got me and we went in the car and we drove to that warehouse, me and him. He didn't, there wasn't a discussion. It was we're going. Get your keys, get your car, we're going. And I was like, where are we going? He goes, we're going to I think it was Mansfield. I goes, we're going to Mansfield. I was like, don't want to go to Mansfield at the best of times, to be honest. I was happy to let that stock go. And my dad, and I just remember, he just walks around the factory, the warehouse, just picking up fucking stock. Just 80k. He goes, we're picking up 200 quid's worth of stock, whether it's yours or someone else's, we're taking it. And my dad's he's fearless. Even now, he's had a stroke, but he's absolutely fearless. He just keeps going. He's a machine. And I think because he just sniffs out. I think sometimes there's an ability with people that have been bankrupt once, maybe. There's this fear that it's going to come back and happen again. And I think it just sharpens them. And I think Fred, I don't think he strictly went bankrupt, but he had a failure of his, which you can hear on the podcast, and it sharpened him. And I don't think I've had that. I've not. My challenges, they've sharpened me in different ways. But it gives people that have had it hard this ability to smell a threat from a mile off. And I think my dad and Fred and James, and maybe Mark to some degree, they can sniff it off a mile off. If something is business threatening, and sometimes I'll say to Fred, I think you overreacted. He goes, never think you overreact with a business threat. And I'm like, it reinforces the message. These people in my life, they've probably saw threats coming at me faster than I've seen them coming, and I'm probably a bit blasé, ooh, don't worry about that. And they're like, no, and I think everyone needs someone in their world that's going to give them a kick up the arse. And that's all these people that I've mentioned.
I'm the same, really. I've managed to surround myself with people who, I think it's important to surround yourself with people who possess different skills to you, isn't it? Like you say, you might be quite blasé and quite relaxed about things. And you do need that contrast of people who are able to say, actually, no, come come on, Stel, come on, Tom, you can't be relaxed about this. This is important. You've got to, and I've my business mentor, and I'm interviewing you, so I'm not going to bore you about it, but it's a guy who's a very successful. Had a very successful catering business. He sold it for 40-something million to a French company back in the late 90s, and he's still a mentor of mine. He just hammered into me, and still hammers into me. I had dinner with him. He lives up in Rutland, but I had dinner with him a couple of weeks ago. He came down to Cornwall to see me, and the importance of knowing your gross profits, knowing your gross margins, understanding costs and sales. And I needed that, because that isn't me at all. I'd rather stand there and cut fish by eye and make price something off the top of my head. Think, that sounds like enough. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I'd be if I didn't know people like him.
I'd agree with that.
Who the importance, and so I think you're absolutely right in that you need people to kind of make you a more rounded businessman, don't you? By I
remember going out to dinner with James once, and he said, "Why'd you keep procrastinating?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, last time I saw you, you said you were going to do something. You've still not done it." And I thought, "No, easy." And then I didn't procrastinate again. And he's just like, "Do it. If you could do something, let's say you got something on your to-do list for Tuesday, but you can actually do it on Monday. Why do it on Tuesday?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a really good point." And James always says to me, your worst enemy is procrastination, always. And it lives in my head, it really lives in my head. And then, obviously my dad obviously probably did think I was a lazy shit when I was younger. So that lives in my head too. And then, but yeah, I like people around me that will poke me with a hot poker, to say, look, do something.
Staying on business for a bit. Pet business peeves. So irritations of yours, not only in your own business, but in the businesses you visit and the businesses you work with.
I think it's very little. It's just a little peeve. Is people saying that they're CEOs. Fucks me off. If you are a CEO of a publicly listed business, then that is fine. Yeah. But if you own, and this is not a knock against people that own coffee shops, because I know them, but if you own a coffee shop and you're doing it with someone else, you are not a CEO. You are not. And I think everything's become really popularly named now. You can't just be the owner of a coffee shop, which is absolutely fine. Yeah. The majority of people that I meet that aren't business people wish they could be business people. So you don't have to fluff it up with the words CEO. You just don't. And I think reserve titles for what they are. I've just never really liked fluffy titles. I don't know why. I don't know why. It just pissed me off.
Do you think it's because people think it gives them a bit of
self-importance
and extra credibility when they can tell friends and acquaintances what they are? It's maybe in their minds, being a CEO is something to be more proud of than being a coffee shop owner, which I'm not sure it necessarily should be. I agree entirely with you. I think own what you do.
Own what you do. I own a business that supplies restaurants, pubs, fish and chip shops, wholesalers, whatever. And that title will change soon, but I'm not changing it until it needs to be changed, And I don't know. It could be a self-importance thing. It could because it sounds trendy, CEO. But now when I get business cards that say CEO or COO, I do ask them, "Are you a publicly traded company?" And they were like, "No." "Oh, so you're not a CEO." Because if it's a limited company, then you're just chief executive, and that's fine because that's bloody ace. But do you have to add the O? And I think someone recently said to me, I think they were just they work in a fish and chip shop, and they do a lot of the back end stuff, so nothing at the front end, and it's not a big group. So they've got 2 shops, I think. And she said, "I'm the COO," and I looked at her and I was like, really? And she's like, "Yeah, COO." I was like, "So you're not just ops, operations, back end, you're genuinely." She goes, "Yeah," and she shows me a card, and she was COO, and I was like, "Okay." And the problem is, it's hard to deal with people when they've got that level of importance, that perceived level of importance, because I don't know, words matter. I'm really obsessed with words, because I get drilled into me every day, and I'm writing every day, and I'm doing podcasts as much as I can, and so words matter. So if I'm sending an email and someone just responds, it's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Did you read anything of what I just said?" "Yeah." Like, you know, and I think that really that grinds my gears. Like, you know, people that just
Well, that's also rude, and rudeness is really irritating, isn't it?
I just think. Well, the problem is, like, so recently we were doing a project with somebody, and like they'd just read the email and be like, "Yeah," and then we'd start the project, and then they're like, "Oh, well, what about this? This hasn't been clarified, and that hasn't been clarified." And you're like, "No, it has. Go back and read. We've clarified all of this, you know."
Yeah.
And you just and they're like, "Oh, well, I didn't read it." Well, why'd you say yes? You know, like, because yes, you know, could land you into hot trouble one day. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think because my next my next question is going to be petty rages, and actually your CEO one is quite petty.
Yeah, it's probably petty.
I think that's going to take
people, on a personal level. People in the third lane on the motorway doing 60 mile an hour with no cars in front of them, that will send me into a rage. Like,
it's normally a Honda Jazz, isn't it? Because I've got Honda Jazz in my notes.
Honestly, it just it is enough to send me into a rage. You know, like if Mira hates it because she knows how angry I get, so she's angry at them because they're making me angry. Like, but like, you know, what are you doing in the third lane? Like, and I know it's not the fast lane, but it's the overtaking lane at the very least. And you know, and if someone's doing 60 because they just forgot and they're in their own world and they're probably listening to a podcast, or they're just knobheads, like, and there's that too. So yeah,
well, the middle lane's like the middle lane's the same though. That's fucking annoying. When
I
was
on my way back from Lancashire yesterday from Morecambe, and there was a guy in the middle lane. No, it was in the third lane actually, and he's in the third lane, and I was riding him hard because I'm like, mate, like, it's a motorway and you're doing 60 in this lane. And then he turns around, and this is what I want to say, like, talk about oblivious. He turns around and gives me the V. And I'm like, what? Like, mate, like, come on. I've overtaken you doing 71. Like, you know, what the hell? And then I get back into the left lane, so overtake and get back into the left lane. And he's got the audacity to give me the V. Like, mate, chill your beans. Like, you know.
And it pisses you off for about the next 2 hours as well, doesn't it? You think,
well, I was on the phone to you after that, to be fair, so I did chill out a bit by that point. So, yeah. But yeah,
no, I totally get that. I totally get that, and that is that's a justifiable petty rage. I think I've got on my notes. I've got people noisy eaters.
I hate that.
People who call their pets fur babies.
I've not come across that. So the eating, the loud noises, that's called misophonia, I think, and that pees me off. Just seeing people.
I think it's a common one,
I think so.
One,
I remember watching a YouTube video a while ago. The person narrating, had a boiled sweet in his mouth. I could hear it. I could just hear every time it tapped the back of his tooth. And I was just like, I had to stop. It was a 6-minute video or whatever, and I couldn't even make it past the first 40 seconds. And so I do pick up on that quite fast, the noises, especially doing podcasts, because you become very attuned to noise.
Unfashionable opinion. So an opinion you have.
You'd have to give me an example, because I did look at that and thought, I don't know. Like,
well, it's just a strong opinion you hold that nobody else, or very, very few other people, share with you. So you might not have one.
Yeah.
You know, you might just be somebody.
I think actually quite boring in that respect. Like, I don't know. I can't think of anything. Nothing comes to mind. Like,
do you think that Coventry is a beautiful city? That
would be like. That's all right, to be fair. It's all right. But no, I don't. No. I think what would probably be an unusual opinion is probably my MSG thoughts, and or that all goes against popular opinion, like, or the liking of McDonald's, or because I very much cut through things. I try not to get swept up in popular opinion. It doesn't mean I never do, but I try not to get swept up in popular opinion. I try to make my own informed decision, and I think that's actually quite rare today.
Well, what about conspiracy theories then?
Like, I don't know. I don't think I do, and also I don't want to knock people that do. Like, you know, a friend of mine says, "Oh, there's no such thing as a conspiracy theory, just alternative truth." It's really weird, conspiracy theories. Like, if there's a guy on Twitter called David Icke, and I don't follow him, but he comes up in my feed every now and then, and everyone's like, "David Icke was right about COVID. David Icke was right, but he was wrong about the royal family being lizards." Like,
yeah, David Icke is batshit crazy.
Do you get what I mean, though? But how people can twist something to make it fit their narrative. Yeah. So
Yes.
David Icke is like, he's a legend because he's told us that this lockdown over COVID, it's all a big plan. Yeah. But I didn't see nobody else saying that when COVID was actually raging and there wasn't actually at the time, a vaccine, and older people were dying and businesses were closing. I think hindsight is genuinely a beautiful thing. Yeah. Like we look back on all that time and bad times and we think, yep, they knew. No, they know now. Like they know now, but they didn't know then. So no. I think probably an unpopular opinion is that I don't think the government tried to lock us down, like to make it like China or anything like that. I think they just tried to keep the economy going when it was teetering. I think they wanted to stop people from dying. Did they probably not know about unintended consequences? Yeah, that's true. Do I think they helped lots of businesses? Yeah. Did they help businesses that probably didn't need help, that took the money and did a runner? Yeah, probably. But these are all unintended consequences. So imagine if when the first grants came out and the first waves of money coming out to help business, imagine the government saying, we're doing nothing for another month until we can create a means test. And then once we've created a means test, you can all apply for it. And then you'll all get your money in 2 weeks, or maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks.
No, exactly. It wouldn't have been practical. And I think, to be fair, they have managed to get some of the money back retrospectively.
So I think accidentally you've hit...
Which is a much better way round.
I think accidentally you've hit on an unpopular opinion that I probably have. I think that's probably one.
I think it's unpopular to say anything positive.
Well, I think it's unpopular to say anything positive about anybody. Like, I think we live in a world where everybody just wants to slate something. I don't think the grass is much greener on the other side. I think that they're both very similar. I think that what we're going to see is we have a centre right now, and if the others get in, it's centre left. They're not going to be that different. So the economy they're inheriting is very similar to what they're going to have anyway. Well, no, sorry. What it is now is what it's pretty much going to be later on. So I don't think there's no magic pill. There's no red and green pill or red and blue pill. It's going to be a slightly different pill. Yeah. So I think if everybody's waiting for the next government, whether it's Tory or Labour, to revolutionise everything, I think they're dreaming. I think, one thing that Mark Drummond taught me is that the government we have is that the government system we have is the least worst system it could be. Everyone's like, no, but it should be perfect. He keeps telling me you're an idealist. You're wrong. You want it to be perfect. Yeah. We don't live in an idealistic world. And we argue about this. I'm like, yeah, but why don't we have this? Because that's not the way it is. He goes, so what I said to him, would you vote for, so he'll probably hate me for saying this, but I said to him, would you vote for Labour or Tory and why? As a business owner. And he said to me, I'm going to vote for the person that's going to do the least amount of damage to the economy. Whereas everyone else goes into politics with the opposite thought, and that's the idealism. And as we get older, you drop that idealism and you become a realist.
Yeah, just going to look for damage limitation.
Yeah, exactly that. So who is going to fuck up what currently exists the least? Yeah. Because when they tell you they're going to do amazing, it's bollocks for the most part. So that's probably another unpopular opinion.
I've got here a full career change. So you do something. I would suspect the answer is to be a manager of McDonald's.
No, it's not. Although
it's at the top of your list.
I'd probably love to be a franchisee, but I think if I was really good, and I'm not, I think it'd be like a photographer. I think I'd like that. I think that's one hobby one thing that I bought for the business, that DSLRs and stuff, and I thought that was my excuse initially. But I enjoy it. I'm not that good, but I enjoy it. Could I ever turn it into a business? Probably not, because I see amazing people do it, and I love what they do.
Is it what sort of photography is it? Is it sort of a?
Well, I like all sorts. I like all sorts. I like landscape. I like walking through London and doing city shots. I like taking food shots, and I'm not that good, but I'm all right. And I could be better. I think I could be better, but you know what? There's professionals out there. When you see professionals do their job, you think, wow.
I think particularly with food photography, the science that goes behind the actual. I mean, for the big
100%. Because it's a theatre show at that point. Have you seen how Burger King, they've got like rigs and like they have patties on all these rigs, loads of light.
Yeah.
They've got a camera with what's it called? I forgot what it's called, but it's a really thin, long lens. Like it's a macro lens essentially. And the rig comes out, and as it comes out, all the rig just collapses and the burger falls perfectly into a burger. And you think, oh, like that is amazing. And I've seen all the videos of how they do that. I couldn't do that. I'm not creative enough to do that. That is amazing. Or patient enough to just eat the burger. But like, yeah, so
I don't think you'd want to eat those
probably
burgers.
Not under those lights for that long, actually. And probably another thing I'm really interested in, what I'd love to do actually, is probably like be a psychologist, therapist, something like that, behavioral psychologist. I'm always trying to figure out people, always. Like I watch TV and I'm like, oh, I'll figure out their angle. Or, you know, like I'll stand at the school playground. I'll say to Miriam, like, oh yeah, she's like that. He's like that. I can tell already. And she's like, no, you're wrong. And I'm usually nearly always right. Like I don't know why. Like I've just got this knack. Like, and maybe it's just because I deal with a lot of people day to day. But I think I'd be good at that. I've probably got to focus on listening more if I'm going to be a therapist rather than talking, because that's not going to help anybody. But yeah, those are probably the two things that I'd like to do.
Maybe when you grow up.
I've still got a long way to go.
I think we've spoken. I've got quite a lot of notes here about Ceres. I think we've actually covered quite a lot of it in terms of your innovations, because I think you've already spoken about how you have the ideas and you probably rely on other people, including Miriam, to kind of see those through on your behalf. So you're the kind of the Willy Wonka.
I don't know. A lot of people tend to think, oh, you know, you do amazing things, you do that. But, you know, in actual fact, it's just the people I've teamed up with from early on. Like from early on, I've just been a people person, and I've teamed up with people that have the same outlook as me.
And do you feel like you're sort of easy to work for?
I probably think it could go both ways. I think that I could probably be annoying. I could probably.
Is that from being a perfectionist?
Both. I think a bit of both. Like when I'm in a good mood, I'm in a really good mood. Like, you know, you're not going to get me out of that. It takes a lot. Actually, if you get me out of a good mood, I'll get very angry actually, because I go the other way completely, because I'm like, I resent the fact that I was in a really good mood and someone just ruined it. But I think that for the most part, what I'm really strong on is for example, like the way I see our website work, I'll give you a brief example, is that people pay and they pay up front to get something. If it's not packed off that day, like I've explained that it needs to be, and it's fell into our rules, so it's before 2:00, why didn't it go? Like, I'll get really annoyed. The job wasn't done right. Yeah. You know, like there should not be parcels here if they're meant to be gone. You know, to the point where, you know, last Christmas, FedEx did not turn up. Like, I think I might have told you this story. Like, and FedEx did not turn up 3 days before Christmas. I did 8 journeys with all the parcels and took them to FedEx. And then in the second week of January, I moved to DPD. Right. Because once someone F's me off like that, that's it. You're out. And that's the same internally as well, because if I'm training you to do something and you've been told a million times, like, and I've tried to train you, then you know, why are we still doing it this way? Why is it wrong? You know? So yeah, stuff like that bothers me. So I think I can be either really generous when things are right, though. That's the opposite side. So on the flip side, if people are doing their job great, and I really appreciate it. Like, you know, if Matty at the warehouse had a stonking week, we'll go out for a burger, or, you know, he'll get a bonus, or there's always something that we look after people, you know?
I think that's incredibly important. And I think particularly in the way things are now, where recruitment is so difficult, and finding good people is probably as hard as it's ever been. I think it's incredibly important, isn't it, to look after the staff that you do have. You know, we we give incentives. You know, we make sure that all the staff get a bonus at Christmas. We take the managers, like last year, we took all the managers off to Alton Towers and had a couple of days in a little cottage up there, and we go out. We have meals. We do escape rooms and Segway and. It builds. It sounds a bit corny, but it kind of builds that staff camaraderie. But also, I think it's very, very important if people are working hard for you to show in actual physical ways that tangible ways that you appreciate it. You know what I mean? And make sure that they're rewarded.
I agree.
So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. So, what's next for Sarah? Any particular things that we've got to look forward to?
I think more of the same. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but more of the same, being more efficient, getting orders out faster than ever. There is a big thing on the horizon, but I can't talk about it yet because the timelines keep changing.
Right.
But yeah, I just think more of the same. We're really laser sharp focus on being better at what we do. And now someone listening to this might say, oh, you can't do any better. But there's someone out there that's listening saying, well, I've been let down, so you could do better. And I'm pretty obsessed with making it better. It keeps me up at night. It really does. Because my goal is to make things better for people. I don't want people to feel let down, and we have let people down over the years, and because that is, you cannot have 100% perfection rate. You cannot live in that perceptive reality. Well, it's not even a reality. It's a delusion. So my goal is to constantly chip away where we aren't doing amazing and to try and make it amazing.
Well, I think there's little, even as a consumer, such as myself, someone who uses your company, we see little tweaks are always quite obvious. I mean, most recently, really the biggest thing is the new website, which feels a lot more functional. I think I remember saying to you that the last one felt a bit clunky. You know what I mean? It never quite felt intuitive, whereas I think you've improved.
Well, the last one was an overreaction to something that was going on in the world. So, yeah, the original website was built as a blog, and then because we love blogging, and then and a shop front. But when I say shop front, a non-buying shop front, so it was never really that great. And then we wanted to build a shop front, proper shop front, with a blog. And I don't know if I told you, but because you've been very involved and you helped with many others test the new website, and you gave me loads of great feedback, and some of it made us go back to the drawing board, as you know, and because that's what we do. We're not offended. If we're asking for opinions, we want them. Like, I'd be upset if someone didn't give me an opinion, to be honest. And then there was my friend who just kept saying, why do you like brown so much? Brown's horrible. Brown. I told you that, didn't I? Like, he goes, why is it brown? Why is everything brown? I was like, all right, you don't like brown, I get it. And I was like, okay, we'll fix that. He's like, and then when I showed him the second version, he was like, oh, orange, that was better than brown. All right, mate. But like, we had the new website, and then we're having lots of back end problems with the blog, and then it would keep knocking something off, and then something else would break, and we actually rebuilt the website without nobody knowing. Yeah,
right.
So, and nobody noticed because it was such a quick. Well, it took 10 days to do it. I paid a guy to do it. And he did it in 10 days, and then the switch over took, I think it was like 3 minutes while nobody was using it. It had to wait for a gap that nobody was using it, and then switched it over. Right. It's been working fine ever since. The website loads faster, the blogs load faster, the photos load faster, the photos don't crash other parts of the website. So I do things, and my friend Carlo, he always says to me, "You overdo everything. You over-engineer everything. It's annoying." And so, for example, at home, I've got a mesh Wi-Fi router, and one upstairs, one downstairs. But if you put a cable on them, they work faster together. You get equal speeds rather than slightly less slower speeds upstairs. Well, what did I do? Yeah. I buy a Cat 8 cable. Drill a hole downstairs, drill a hole upstairs, drag it out, staple it all up, find out that the Cat cable can't be cut. Yeah. He rings up a data center that he knows, and they're like, who's using a Cat 8 cable? Is it like a server? Is it like a server room? And he goes, no, it's my mate who's doing a mesh network. And they were like, this guy's an idiot. Run away. He's get away from him as fast as you can. He's crazy. And then he's like, Stel, he just rings me up politely. He's like, I think you need a Cat 6 cable. And I was like, all right, Carlo, I'll do it. And he's like, honestly, mate, I to gain probably, I don't know, we joke, but let's say to gain a little bit of speed, I've now got expanding foam on my son's carpet floor because I was patching the hole. Like, so there's things that I'm willing to do that are just obsessive. Like, at the warehouse, we've got a Starlink, I can't deal with things that there should never be an excuse for why something doesn't work right. And I think that's just me. It's in my personality. So when the website, we'd spent all that money to make sure it was working right. Well, what's another $5,000 to make it work brilliantly, to stop it from having niggles, And he'll just say to me, "You're fucking crazy." And I'm like, because I want it to work brilliantly. I don't want a customer to message me saying, "I tried to do something and it doesn't work." It really, and this is why I'm hard on others, because I've got really high standards for myself. So I'm also hard on others, which probably makes it hard person to work for.
Well, we need to speak to one of your staff. Find out what they.
Matt is probably still waking up to me.
Good. So, just one another thing that I've seen you write about, and it's always a subject that's interested me, is veganism, and it's something that I think we saw a few years ago. We saw quite a big sort of rise in veganism, and that seems to possibly be sort of cooling off a little bit now, and it might be on either leveled out or possibly a slight downward trajectory. But I've got friends who are vegan, and I love debating them. But they actually, what interests me is that they have a real advantage. When you're debating a vegan, the vegan has the advantage because they're starting from their starting position is, we don't see any excuse for animal cruelty, and there's now, with the availability of vegan food, not only processed vegan food, but also the availability of plants and legumes and the wide variety of vegetables and plant-based foods we can eat. It's no longer really an excuse to say, well, we couldn't survive on a vegan diet. So I've always, as you know, I've got pigs and chickens. I'm an animal lover, but I have quite a carnivorous diet. I'm an omnivore, but I eat a lot of meat. And over the years, I've struggled morally to reconcile, those things. What's your views on veganism?
I think we have to look at, number one, we have to look at how long humans have existed on this planet. That is undeniable. We've existed on this planet for a long time. And by the way, I'm not a grand font of wisdom or anything on this matter. I'm just giving you how I feel, really. From what I understand, cavemen went for meat. Now, if they were really hungry for days and they went past the beehive, they'd eat the honey because it's a very fast way of getting glucose into the system. But let's fast forward, because this is the world we live in today. I still believe that meat is the best diet, the food for your diet. It's going to be optimum. Do I enjoy vegetables? Yeah, I love vegetables. I love salad. I love vegetables. But the one thing I can't comprehend is the militancy behind it. I eat meat. I'm omnivorous like you. I don't edge up to people and start getting in their face. And there's a joke out there, like a meme saying, how do you know if someone's vegan? They're going to tell you. And it is really true. There is, not all of them, but they're always going to get in your face. I did a podcast with a butcher a few years ago. It was one of the first podcasts I did, I think, or at least in the second year. And he said, he'd be at a party talking, and they'd go up to him and just start, at a party. And he said, I'd never do that. I'm a butcher. He goes, you're never going to see me going up to someone and start screaming about why they should eat meat. He goes, I don't care.
No, I completely agree. And one thing I've often, the people that I know who are vegan, one thing I've said to them before is you're not going to suddenly, you do all the activism in the world. You're not going to suddenly convert the whole world into being vegans overnight. You know what I mean? It's just never going to happen. People like myself, I think we're beyond help. We eat meat.
No, I genuinely don't see it as a negative, Tom. I don't think we're beyond help. I think that we just eat what we eat, and do you source the best quality meat you can within your budget? Yes,
exactly. This is what I was going to say. I think if their approach was more about finding some common ground, so we should maybe look to reduce the suffering, and maybe look to reduce factory farming, I think that's something where a lot of people would find common ground.
I think the problem is, again, people are delusional on every side of this argument. Yeah. So you've got vegans that think that you could eat a plant-based diet and get all the bioavailability that you can from a meat-based diet. You just can't. For example, the fact that iron is different in broccoli than it is in liver. So you can't your body can't even break it down to get the full amount out, because you just can't. And I think you need to eat about 4 heads of broccoli to get the same amount of iron as you probably would with, I think it was like 4 ounces of liver. So let's just assume that for a moment. Let's assume that it's like for like. The problem is, you've got shit diets on both sides of the argument. Yeah. You've got people that eat hot dogs and crappy ham that's pumped with water. And then you've got people on the other side that are eating Beyond Meat burgers that are full of junk. I actually think if you're going to be vegan, and this is a strong opinion, if you're going to be vegan, you need to stay off all the crap, and you probably need to be eating an organic diet too, because you're going to be eating more stuff that's been sprayed with pesticides. So in actual fact, you probably should be an organic diet too, because you're going to be having a high amount of, of veg, let's say, or whatever. I followed one person for a while on Instagram or whatever, and all she ate was fruit and fruit smoothies, and she'd eat like 2 pineapples for lunch, and she just became type 2 diabetic. It's not a normal diet. Now, I understand their concerns about animal husbandry. I do. And you would understand it more than most, because you have animals. You understand it a lot more than me. Should any animal be mistreated on this planet for the gain of food? No. Now, can we grow animals nicely and decently and healthily? Yes, 100%. And is that the meat we should be buying? Yeah, I think we should. Should that be the standard in the UK? 100%. Yeah, I agree with all those things. Yeah. But
do you take care personally when you're sourcing?
Yeah,
sourcing
I would
meat
buy the best meat I could physically afford at the time. Like, that's just the way I am. Yeah. And my proportion of my diet is meat. The good thing is, in the UK, we do have very high standards. And we also, there is a stigma in mistreating animals, and so there should be. I remember a few years ago, there was a story in a video on Panorama where I think it was a pig factory, and some of the farmers were kicking the pigs. Well, they got shut down. And that's the free market at play. If you're going to do something and get caught, then you deserve the consequences. I think that the discussion on both sides can be a bit nutty. Like, I see this one guy, and he goes to rallies and he'll eat steak in front of the vegans. I'm like, come on, mate. Like,
Piers bloody Morgan.
Oh, does he? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
He's had a steak or a burger. He had a vegan guest on his horrible little talk show that he does.
I don't mind some of his talk shows, to be honest. I don't like rally, but I'm just like, I'll listen to it passively while I'm doing things. He has an ability to wind everybody up, even the people that like him. But you know what? He's not that in real life, and that's the truth. I find that all of these guys, they're all acting for an audience. And if we met him in a McDonald's, they're probably like, "You're right, Tom, I do, mate, easy as pie." Yeah, and I think that's they're just all pandering to an audience, and
it's like Jeremy Clarkson as well, isn't it? A very controversial figure.
But is he actually saying anything that controversial? No, they just say something, get the sound bites, get in the news, and they've made a bit of media for themselves. But that argument about veganism, whatever, everybody can do what they want, be happy, stop telling others what to do, and enjoy life, and that's it. And the fact is, eating meat is not akin to chugging on 80 cigarettes a day. That's just not the case. And I think that needs to be made clear.
That's good. It's good. I think there's been a lot of moves recently, haven't there? And a lot of changes to the industry in terms of environmental improvements that the government have introduced, such as the plastic ban and polystyrene and all of that sort of stuff. Do you think it's going to make any difference? Do you see it all as positive change? Well, I'm spending a lot more money on packaging now than I ever have done in the past. So it really makes it.
I think it's worse in a different way, and maybe better in a different way or a similar way. So, for example, I think now in the UK, nearly nothing goes to landfill. and that's across the UK, and nearly everything goes to be incinerated. So if you've got a pizza box that's made out of cardboard, what's the difference whether it's a pizza box made out of cardboard or polystyrene? Now, if you choose to use better packaging because it's better for your food, then go for it. Like that's what I do. I choose packaging based on what I'm putting in it. Yeah. But I don't know. I think the problem is for so many years, the government's just passed it on and made it somebody else's problem. And now they're actually trying to deal with it, which causes upheaval. But if it's just going to be burnt, could you argue, does it matter what it is? Like, I genuinely, and I asked this question.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point.
I asked this question early on, and Mark Drummond was one that says to me, well, actually, if, let's say, bagasse burns cleaner, then that could be a net benefit, couldn't it? And I was like, good point.
Yeah,
that is a very good point.
Yeah.
You know, but if we're still burning carrier bags that are black bags, and whatever's in there, think of what you put in your bin, you know, and let's say like you're putting like packaging that's had bacon in it or steak in it, because that can't go through normal recycling. So it's plastic. So is it a form of greenwashing? Probably. Should we be doing better? Probably. Does it solve all the problems? No. I don't know. Sometimes I remember years ago when we were kids, we're a similar age, and when we were kids, there was a big campaign about littering. And I just think they made it everybody else's problem. Like McDonald's had to put a little sign on their packaging saying littering isn't good, and Coca-Cola had to. But that doesn't solve the problem that people are knobheads and they get the crisp wrapper or the whatever it is and just lob it on the floor. And I feel sometimes everyone else is targeted, but not the person who actually does the problem. Like, and I think it's because nobody wants to go after Joe Blogs, the consumer. Oh, they're sacred. Whereas I think, well, if everyone did their bit, it wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I think that the fact is everyone's so quick to go get recyclable packaging or compostable packaging for takeaways, but neither is true because you're not allowed to compost it. Yeah. And bagasse can only be composted in anaerobic conditions. And it doesn't even make it that far because when, what's it called? Whoever they are, the local council or whoever's taking your bins away, I'm trying to think of Biffa, whoever, they just burn it. It don't make it to the composting. The only thing that makes it to the composting site is your grass and cuttings. So I do feel like sometimes there's all these policies, but are they doing the right thing? Probably not. And there's also probably someone out there that knows 10 times more than me.
I think you're right, though. I think the government had to be seen to be doing something. And so it's paying lip service, really, isn't it? Rather than any meaningful
100%. 100%. And I think, I just don't think the right packaging will ever exist. I don't think it will. I think that is the way our culture is quite wasteful. But at the same time, if it's being incinerated, then it's having a net benefit. Yeah. So then why be all hard on it? Just say, yeah, that's fine. We can accept this rubbish because it can be burnt. You're doing everything. You're doing the world a favor. And actually they burn things now and it comes out really clean. Like, it's not like it was where you see all the grey smoke. Like, if you drive past any sort of incinerator now, you can't see smoke. It's clear. I think now it does actually benefit the economy.
We'll talk about fish and chips because that's what we're all about at the end of the day. And so is it still, that's something that you still enjoy, fish and chips?
I do. But like, I must admit, I enjoy the foods more. Like, and I do enjoy fish and chips. I don't eat it as often as I'd like. But I probably eat it often enough. And I know that sounds like a big paradox, but I think it's just one of those things. I don't crave it. I don't like sit there thinking, oh, fish and chips. I can watch a video of fish and chips and almost tell you what it tastes like. Because I've been in that many fish and chip shops and I've seen all the different batters and all the different oils and all the different oil states. So yeah, I don't pine it. I don't like, I need it in my life. That's steak. Like, yeah, like, so yeah, like I miss steak, I miss meat, like, but I don't miss fish and chips. I enjoy it, but I don't ever miss it.
No. It's one of those foods that you can sometimes crave, isn't
Yeah,
it?
no, 100% in the right. Yeah,
I think it's that
yeah,
saltiness,
like
isn't it? It's
when we go to the beach sometimes in the summer at Western-super-Mare, or we go to Exmouth, like we'll get fish and chips, and it's enjoyable. You're at the beach, and then
got to be done by the seaside. It's
yeah,
got to be
and
done,
then
isn't it?
and then sometimes in the winter, like if I'm in Whitby or Bournemouth, I'll have fish and chips. So
And does it have to be beef
no,
dripping
not
for
really.
you?
No, I've had terrible fish and chips fried in beef dripping, and I've had great fish and chips fried in beef dripping, and I'm pretty much like that about anything. So when people say, "Oh, is it frozen at sea versus fresh, or wet fish, or chilled fish?" No, I've had bad and good. I've had the best and the
Yeah.
worst of everything. So yeah, it does not have to be beef dripping. I like beef dripping, but it doesn't have to be beef dripping.
Yeah, I mean, some people would disagree. Some people say it does absolutely have
Oh
to be
yeah,
beef
and
dripping, don't they?
but
I think,
again, when you live in the Midlands, you're going to see both of that. You have to go an hour up north to get dripping, and an hour south to get veg, and so yeah.
this was the next thing I was going to ask you. There's obviously always that battle, isn't there, between the north-south divide? Do you think that there's a clear winner in terms of regions, or do you think there's good fish and chips, there's shit?
I think there's good and there's bad. I think that maybe if somebody was to count them all, and then say, oh, there's a clear winner. I think there's always going to be that argument, like oh, one's better than the other. I think some people associate fish and chips with the north, so they would then say that's better. One thing I would say that impresses me is that a town like Whitby has, like, if you took every chip shop outside of Whitby and put it in in a different county, they'd probably be the best fish and chip shop in the county. And yet they're all in Whitby, and for the most part, they all get along, and they all serve great product. And I think that's why Whitby has sort of become the spiritual home of fish and chips. It's not the home of fish and chips, but it has sort of become synonymous with great fish and chips. I can run off a list of some great fish and chip shops in Whitby. And if I didn't mention some, it's because I don't know them, but they're great. You very rarely do you see someone say that they had bad fish and chips in Whitby. You might have someone say, well, this is my favourite and it's better than the other one. And that's just normal people being competitive. Yeah. But there isn't a bad fish and chip shop in Whitby.
Well, it shows that competition drives
I think it does. I think it does. And new ones open all the time and older ones close, and standard keeps rising. But one thing I can say is that they're all really passionate about their great fish and chips.
Good, right. I don't want to wrap this up so basically, one last thing that I really do want to do, my staff, we have a staff group chat, and they wouldn't forgive me if I didn't ask them the quick fire questions that they've got on the group chat.
This is all their work, is it? Okay.
This is all their work. I'm going to have to filter some of these out potentially. I don't know what.
If someone just said something like, "Why are you a knob?" Because that is a really harsh quick fire question.
So I deliberately didn't want to see these because I thought it would give us both a little bit of a treat. So okay, so we've got if you're stuck on a desert island for a year, who would you most like to be with you? Gordon Ramsay or Delia Smith?
But I think Gordon Ramsay would abuse me after a while. I think I think he'd just start shouting at me after a while, and I think his level of perfectionness would probably depress me after about 10 minutes. Yeah, so probably Delia Smith. However, I don't think that'd be any better because you don't get successful by being sloppy. So I'd probably say Delia, but it's not a clear win.
Okay. Marmite.
I like it.
Love or hate?
Yeah, I like it with cheese.
Same.
Specifically with cheese on toast.
Okay. So melted or?
Yeah, melted. Yeah.
Okay. Fucking hell. Right. Doing your best Yoda impression, tell me how you drink your coffee.
Oh, I should know this. Well, I guess you could just say hot, because I'm not going to do the voice, but it'd use one word or make it sound Welsh. So,
You were supposed to do the voice.
I can't.
I'll feed it back.
No, I can't do
it. Besides Cornwall, obviously, where is your favourite holiday destination?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. Like we like to go Bristol a lot, not so much for a holiday because we've got family there, and then we go from there to other places. So we'll go like Exmouth or we'll go Weston-super-Mare like, as a family, and we do like days away. But we haven't done lots of time away in the UK, a lot, and I think that's probably because of my background being Cypriot. That you end up just going to Cyprus a lot. But I like. But then also, I think what ruins it for the family is that I travel a lot. So then when they're like, oh, let's go to somewhere, I'm like, oh, I've been there. Like, and they're like, well, that's not fair. Like, Alex is so annoyed that I go to Bournemouth all the time. And he's like, well, we don't get to go. And I'm like, but I went for work or I went to like, wherever. And he's like, so I think that's probably another thing that ruins it a little bit. And that's not a clear answer. And this ain't true. This ain't a true quickfire because I'm elaborating. So
you elaborate with everything. What would your wife say is your most annoying?
Just being me. I think I wind her up loads, so that would be one. Yeah. Just being me. Like waking up in the morning. I don't
know. Breathing.
Yeah, apparently I can do that wrong as well. Yeah. So.
This is a bit different. Who's your favourite gangster rapper?
Well, I don't know if we still refers to as gangster rap, but I really did like Tupac when I was younger, massively. Yeah. I still listen to his music now. So,
yeah. Oh, I didn't have you down as a Tupac fan, but it's good. Right, I'm not reading that one.
Was that Wolf? Is it profane?
Shane, that one. The one who put the Barbie doll on the elf.
Explains it all.
Yeah. Have you ever tasted your own earwax?
No, I don't think I have. Maybe on accident on the end of a pen, but no, I don't think so.
It's quite memorable.
No, then.
Beer or wine?
I'd say I don't drink any but wine. Let's say, yeah. I like whiskey, but I don't drink that often because I drive a lot. But yeah, but out of the two, if you said beer or wine, it'd be cold wine, I guess.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
There was a wrong answer for that one. And
I don't know. Cats, I don't know. Cats annoy me because they're a bit. Dogs are loving unconditionally, even if they don't know you that much. Cats are schemers. They want what they want, and they'll manipulate you to get it. And I don't like feeling like I've been played by a cat. I like dogs that just give them. I just like dogs that are unconditional. Like, but I ain't got a dog. I'd love a dog. So.
It's difficult when you work long hours, isn't it?
Yeah, and a wife that doesn't like dogs.
Fair enough. Do you believe in Father Christmas? I think we've covered that. You probably don't believe in Father Christmas. If you did, would you be on the good list or the naughty list?
Because I don't believe in it. So and I'm a Grinch. So
peas or curry?
Ooh, again, I like all sauces, but in this instance, curry. Usually, I get all of them. I'll get peas, curry, and tartar sauce. I just dip. Yeah,
pile it on like a soup.
No, dip. I can't have it all on. No, that's disgusting. Ugh. Yeah, it's not fish and chips curry, is it? Like as in a bowl and sloppy. I just like dipping.
Yeah, fair enough. Cod or haddock?
Again, I don't think that is. I like both, but I'd be happy with both. I wouldn't want to pick one.
Fair enough. Good. Well, on that note,
are you sure you've covered everything? I don't want you thinking that I've cut you back.
No, not at all. I was conscious at the time. Looking at the, I think we were going to talk a little bit about. We can always do it again.
I do want to get you on to have you to read the news.
We'll leave it for another time because I think we both know what we were going to talk about, and I think giving brief answers or having brief conversations on
any subject. Every subject needs context, and that's why I do talk a lot because I like to give everything context, and I like to talk a lot. So yeah.
No, it's been brilliant. I hope you've enjoyed it.
It's been an experience. Your face. So, but yeah, thanks for that, Tom.
You're welcome, and have a safe journey. Where are you off to today? Leeds.
Yeah, I'll go to the warehouse, and then I'm going to Leeds.
All right, have a safe journey. Lovely to chat to you, and I'll see you soon.
I really enjoyed talking to Tom. What did you think? Did you end up having more questions? If you do, maybe we can do this sort of thing again. If you want to keep in the loop with what we're doing at Sarah's, like I said earlier, you should be following us on social media. But to get information and offers delivered to your inbox, join our mailing list, and the link will be in the episode show notes. If there's somebody you think we should be talking to on the Sarah's podcast, anyone doing something really interesting, if that's a big yes, let me know at stelios@worldofsarahs.com. Be sure to share this episode with your friends, directly or on social media. If you like this episode, then others in the industry will like it too.